Hello all, welcome to the show. I'm Gus Gagliardi and this is Fire Code Tech. On Fire Code Tech, we interview fire protection professionals from all different careers and backgrounds in order to provide insight and a resource for those in the field. My goal is to help you become a more informed fire protection professional. Fire Code Tech has interviews with engineers and researchers, fire marshals, and insurance professionals, and highlights topics like codes and standards, engineering systems, professional development, and trending topics in the industry. So if you're someone who wants to know more about fire protection or the fascinating stories of those who are in the field, you're in the right place. Welcome to episode 10 of Fire Code Tech. On this episode of Fire Code Tech, we have Paul Inferrera. Paul is a NICET certified technologist in fire alarm systems and the design manager of Drawfire LLC, fire alarm design consulting company. Paul is also an ambassador of NICET and a proponent of the fire alarm industry. Paul teaches 2 online classes on fire alarm systems at the Cape Fear Community College in North Carolina. Today in our interview, we talk about inspection, testing, and maintenance, the fundamentals of fire alarm, commissioning, and much more. This show is a great overview of fire alarm systems, and I couldn't be happier to shine a light on the courses at Cape Fear Community College. Go check them out if you need continuing education credits or if you just want to learn more about fire alarm systems. Well, hello, Paul. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Gus. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. So pleased to have you on the podcast. So I just wanted to get started with, Paul. I was wondering if you would tell me a little bit about your background and how you have found your origins in fire alarm and fire alarm technology and fire protection and life safety. And
Well, I guess most people on fire protection will tell you that they didn't start here; they just kind of ended up here, and I'm in that category. My career actually began in the U.S. Navy as an electrician, and most of my experiences with building and factory automation, um, mostly with HVAC. And I was actually going to work as a application engineer. And took the summer off and moved to the beach, and the company that I was going to start for did a hiring freeze right after 9/11, so I was kind of in a new town with no job. Took a job as an electrician working on a fire alarm system, and after the project was over, I ended up getting a job with a company that did the installation, and that's really how I got into the fire alarm business. I took drafting in high school back when drawings were produced by hand, and really enjoyed the precision of the work. A motivating factor in getting my NICET level 3, which is required for fire alarm design, is basically to get off the road and get out of the motel. Actually, that was a good help. I spent most of my nights on the road studying code books and preparing for NICET exams. So it was a positive out of a perceived negative, and here I am.
wow, very nice. Yeah, it's interesting to hear about your background, and yeah, it seems like that's a very common thread that people tend to fall into the fire protection or fire alarm industry and then kind of stick. So yeah, I have a pretty similar story, so I resonate with that for sure. Yeah, so I understand that you have quite extensive background with fire alarms. So in the next couple questions in the interview, I just kind of wanted to get into some different fire alarm topics and kind of pick your brain on them. I haven't had the opportunity to speak with somebody who is NICET 4 certified for any of the different NICET certifications yet. Something that I've been interested in exploring because I think it's important to not only get the engineer's perspective, but also I believe that there's a lot of value in somebody who is well versed in putting these systems together and not just, kind of notionally putting categories and criteria on paper. Because we all know that it all looks good on paper until you get out in the field and try to put it together. But so I wanted to start with I don't know who all will listen to this episode, so I just wanted to start with, if you would, give an overview of some of the component architecture of a fire alarm system and just kind of go over the basics of what these systems are and their major components, if you would, Paul.
Well, in basic terms, a fire alarm system is designed to protect life and property. That being said, there are three basic types, and that depends on how they report the effects of a fire. Protective premises would be a fire alarm system that alarmed at that premise only, and the occupants would have to dial 911 or call the fire department. Um, the second type would be a supervising station, and this is a fire alarm system at a protected premise that would actually dial out and summon aid to the building. And then a third type would be a public reporting system, and these are the old street boxes that you would see on the corner, and they're predominantly in the Northeast. So you'd pull it just like you would a pull station in some of the fire department. Businesses and premises adjacent to that street box can also connect to it, so an alarm in that building would trigger that public alarm system that goes directly to the fire department. As far as the equipment, fire alarm systems are basically comprised of inputs, outputs, and a processor. Input signals to the control panel processor would come in the form of a smoke detector or heat detector, pull stations, or devices that monitor the sprinkler system. When those signals come in, the processor, which is programmed by the installing technician, would process the inputs and send the appropriate outputs. Outputs would be activation of notification appliances in the form of horn strobes, or speakers. It would also work in concert with other building systems that would capture the elevator, shut down the HVAC, start fans for smoke control, or send signals to a supervising station to summon aid. So that's basically the types and how they would work.
Very nice. I appreciate that. That's a very succinct description. Also, it's hard sometimes working with the general type of commercial fire alarm system. You don't see some of these public reporting systems as much. So it's interesting to hear you talk about that.
Yes, I was actually visiting some relatives in New Hampshire and walked out of a drugstore and about ran into one. And when I saw it, I was kind of amazed and actually see one. But yeah, they're still out there.
Hmm. That's very interesting. Yeah, I haven't seen. I've seen them in like pulled off the wall or after they've been taken out of commission. I don't know if I've ever seen one that's still been in the works. So that's neat. So next, I just wanted to talk a little bit about, because I know this piece is missed a lot of times, and so I just wanted to speak a little bit about the inspection, testing, and maintenance requirements for fire alarm systems. And how do we know about these requirements and where are they found, and maybe something that you might see that's commonly missed in your experience.
Yes, the big takeaway is that the owner of the building are responsible for maintaining the system, which most are unaware. But the inspection, testing, and maintenance requirements for fire alarm and ceiling systems are found in NFPA 72, Chapter 14, and that chapter is dedicated to that to those testing. It will also list the frequency or how often the inspections and testing is performed, and it will also give you a description of how the methods to perform those inspections. The inspections are typically performed monthly, quarterly, or annually. The owner usually schedules a fire alarm or sprinkler inspection to be performed at the same time to reduce the impact of operations. You don't want the fire alarm guy to come in one day and set off the alarm and do their inspection, then have a sprinkler guy come in a few days later and test their portion of the system, which of course will alarm the system as well. So a company that can perform both inspections would be at a lower cost than having one company to inspect the fire and one to the alarm. Maintenance and repairs are usually not planned, and the Chapter 14 will also list the requirements for those activities. It'll describe how to communicate with the owner if their system is deficient, and also testing requirements after repair. I think a big misconception among technicians is they won't do the program at the keypad. Of course, it's cumbersome. They'll get on their laptop and they'll do all the changes, and they'll dump that program into the panel. Uh, but what that does is that constitutes a 100% test of the entire system. So, of course, the owner doesn't want you to go in there and test all 14 floors of a high rise when you've just made a small change. But technically, whenever you do replace the operating program, you have to test all functions of that program.
That's fascinating. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't realize that. When you basically update the logic inside a fire alarm panel, that constitutes a full testing of the system. Yeah, I could see how a technician or anybody would want to be wary of that requirement, um, due to what all that entails. That sounds like a serious thing.
Yeah, well, in the course of a regular repair, the code requires that you only test a certain amount of the affected part. Of course, they don't want you to test the entire system when you just replace one device. But of course, if you replace the program controls everything, and that's why it pulls in the 100% test.
That's a good point. That's good to know. I'm glad that you brought that up. So, Paul, you spoke before a little bit about some of these integrated systems, and I just wanted to touch on this a little bit more because I think that in today's age of the Internet of Things and how everything has just become more connected through the advancement of technology, in general, I just wanted to hear you speak a little bit more about integrated systems in regards to fire alarm systems and what that means. I know you've already kind of touched on it a little bit.
Yes, and this would probably go along the lines of commissioning as well. But the federal government, they more or less took the lead with the whole building design concept to where all the building functions would work together to perform a common function and not really work independently and separately. And of course, whenever you connect everything together, that makes it more complex than just standalone systems, whether it be the sprinkler or the elevator recall, smoke control, or the access control. In that whole building concept, all those systems will work in concert and affect one another. But the main point of the fire alarm code is that other systems are not going to affect the operation of the fire alarm system. So there's a fault with the HVAC system, that fault isn't going to carry over and compromise the fire alarm system.
Yeah. I just think it's kind of interesting to me. We are seeing, I forget which. I know 3 or 4 is or the integrated system NFPA, but and I know that and what I do as an architect and engineer, it's a lot of making sure that these integrated systems function the way they're intended. And yeah, it just seems like a topic that's not going away. And I wasn't aware of the whole building design, um, charging ahead on that issue. Another topic that's frequently causes trouble or just frequently needs investigation in regards to doing business with new or existing clients is how these fire alarm systems report. And there's been a little bit of shakeup recently in the reliability of some reporting methods. So, yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about um, what it means for fire alarm system to report, and some of the different means and methods to facilitate that reporting, and what you see as common in the industry. I know it kind of varies by what the project owner wants, but yeah, I wanted to hear a little bit of your thoughts on that.
Well, I guess the big change would be the internet. Of course, the internet changed every aspect of everyone's life. Uh, but when the old copper lines started to become extinct, in the past you were required to have two separate forms of communication with the fire alarm system, and that was typically with two phone lines, two independent phone lines. Like I said, the internet came along, and you have the voice over IP to where you have your phone and your internet on the same cable going to a building. And when that first came out, you would have, your local cable company hooking up a building, and then they would try to use the fire alarm system to report over that internet. And the power backup requirements for the fire alarm panel wasn't consistent with the power backup of the internet and switching stations. For example, the fire alarm panel is required to have a 24-hour backup, and a lot of the cell and switching stations that the internet used, their backup was only 6 hours or 12 hours. So the communication system, their batteries would go dead, so the fire alarm would sit there without any communication. And I think over the years they've become more streamlined, and those requirements are more better to use the internet. But you're still required two independent forms of communication. So typically, if they use the internet as one form, they'll have a cellular backup, and whenever they lose internet, they can use the cellular transmitter to transmit uh, signal that way, like you would a cell using a cell phone. Um, and as far as reports, there's company now or there's systems where you can, where the building reports and your inspection reports are sent directly to the HJ. Um, this allows the technician to perform inspections, and the results are compiled, and they generate reports. Those reports have dual purposes. They can report deficiencies to the owner. The owner is required to have a report that says what's wrong and what they need to fix, and those systems will do that. Some deficiencies are required to report to the HJ, and if you send those results direct to the HJ, then they get their communication and their report as well. As from a technician standpoint, you basically just have to go around with a barcode reader and scan the device after you test it, and all your reports are done for you, so you don't have to sit there a couple hours after the inspection and compile reports. They're done as you go.
That sounds like a good method. And Paul, I just wanted to ask, what do you see as the most common reporting method these days? I'm not sure how involved you are still with the technician side of things, or just the installation of these systems. But yeah, I didn't know if you had a pulse on that.
I would say the copper phone lines are probably still, I don't say the most common, but they're still there. They haven't gone away. Um, and of course, another is the the internet with the cellular backup. And that's basically the easiest way to do something. If you have a building that goes up, and they're not going to call the phone company anymore, they're going to call the cable company to get their telephone and their internet. And then the installing company will also install a cellular transmitter to give them that backup. So um, if the phone lines aren't in place in an existing facility or complex, then more commonly they'll go with the IP and the cellular backup.
Interesting. Yeah, I just asked because on the design side, sometimes it can be difficult to nail down what's being provided as far as the utility, and if it's going to be fiber optics or copper. And so and then oftentimes we're leaning more towards now the IP or internet protocol means, or the cellular with the backup cellular. So yeah, just wanted to, yeah, I appreciate that. But also, yeah, I wanted to touch on those direct reporting means that you're talking about. It sounds like you're a fan of that way of um, generating reports, and just sounds like it's convenient for the inspector and the building owner if you are somebody who wants to be upright about your taking care of your fire alarm and fire suppression systems. So
Yeah, I think you'll find those reporting systems more often in large campuses or large buildings where there's hundreds and hundreds of devices. If you just have a little strip mall with a pull station and a smoke detector, you're probably not going to go through all the money and the cost to use the building reporting system for that. You just do a quick inspection and fill out your report. but they do have their applications.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. That there's probably a break-even point for device count and complexity of system for those inspection report and automatic reporting uh, methods. So that's interesting. I'm glad you touched on that. In the vein of testing and just fire alarm systems in general, yeah, I wanted to speak with you about commissioning and the role of testing. I don't know if you would touch on that for what that means for fire alarm and maybe how you would go about that and kind of what that process looks like, Paul.
Well, I feel that commissioning is the most critical aspect of putting the system into service because that's really your last chance to catch any discrepancies or any impairments that won't allow the system to perform as designed. Of course, you're going to have the AHJ that's going to come in and give acceptance testing, but technicians shouldn't rely on the AHJ to find all the problems, and that's really not their job. Fire alarm systems are required to be fully functionally tested before you schedule acceptance testing with the AHJ. So, of course, you know it's going to work, and they know it's going to work when they get there. They're not there, like I said, to find problems. In large buildings with systems that are integrated, uh, like we spoke of before, there's a higher level of commissioning requirements that may be appropriate due to the scale and complexity. And you touched on the two codes. It would be NFPA 3, which is the standard for commissioning of fire protection and life safety systems, and also NFPA 4, which is the standard for integrated fire protection and life system testing. This wouldn't be something that the technician decides to do. This would be more in your realm where the specification and the engineer is going to require that the commissioning be performed under one of those two codes. Of course, in that scenario, you'd have an independent third party that would be retained by the owner, and they'd be listed in the project specification to perform that level of commissioning. Again, you wouldn't do that in a strip mall with a pull station and a smoke detector. It'd be on a large high rise or a complex where you have large integrated systems with the smoke control and the elevator recall, where you really want a higher level of scrutiny and you want to make sure those systems are going to work.
Yeah, Paul, that's great. That's a great point. Yeah, the company I work for does a lot of work with aircraft hangars, and so there have been times where my company has been retained for third-party commissioning and just verifying these how these systems work and just the means and methods of that. But yeah, I think it's interesting doing all the some of the different tests. Activating all the initiation devices, the circuit integrity testing. Um, it seems like the one that everybody would probably be most aware of is testing the strobes and making sure they're all synchronized. But yeah, it's interesting to see that process. It's pretty involved. I imagine it's cost prohibitive for a lot of projects, unless they are for very expensive projects. But yeah, I appreciate you touching on that, Paul.
Yes, of course, when you're dealing with multi-million-dollar aircraft, you want to make sure that works and you want to spend the money to make sure it works.
And it's always interesting, the making sure the logic works that it's intended to. For a fire alarm system, some of these integrated systems, for some of these commercial hangars, they can have, when the foam system activates, it'll open louvers, which are not explicitly a fire protection and fire alarm feature, but it's controlling the way the building, moves. It could shut doors, it could open louvers, whether that be in the ceiling or in the sidewall of the aircraft hangars. So it's neat to see this testing done because it's you get to see what an integrated system looks like in action. Although it's not too much fun being up on a boom lift and shutting down a duct smoke detector just and listening for the air handling unit to shut down. But no, I'm just playing. It's still interesting, but it can be difficult.
Sometimes it's better than being in the office.
Yeah, yeah. It can be difficult to perform some of these testing in it, and performing some of these tests makes you think about how you locate these devices. But yeah, it's nice to have a variety of being out in the field and getting to see how it really works, and also being at the computer drafting. So yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about your company, Drawfire LLC, and just I'd like to hear about what kind of projects you're involved with, and yeah, just hear a little bit more about your business, Paul.
Drawfire LLC provides a detailed oriented, cost effective option to having NICET Level 4 certified engineering technicians on staff. Of course, that could be a little bit of an investment for a small company, uh, but having that resource will enable those small companies to compete with larger firms to build larger projects. But also, large corporations will use Drawfire to outsource their design because of our agility to provide a quick turnaround. Of course, in the fire alarm world, everybody wants their drawings yesterday. And if you're a large firm and engineering department, you really can't turn around things that fast. Um, and on the other side of the coin, if you're a small company with no design in-house, it's going to be hard for you to compete to get projects without a good set of shop drawings. So we hit that niche as well. At Drawfire, I basically manage the design department and coordinate the work depending on client priorities. This can be a challenge sometimes when everybody needs the drawings yesterday. But actually, that's the fun part is managing the manpower and the resources to meet a deadline. Drawing lines on a piece of paper gets kind of boring, but it's the challenge of juggling all the clients and all the work.
That's very interesting. It's neat to hear about. Seems like there's a lot of different ways to be involved in construction, and it's not just your. I always like speaking with entrepreneurs and people who have found a different way to make a living in fire protection and fire alarms. So yeah, I like hearing about that. I I hear what you're saying also about people want their either shop drawings or construction documents yesterday. I think that's a byline in the construction industry, or maybe just a property of culture in general right now. People want things instantaneously.
And a little bit of that may be the lack of planning or maybe of the owner. I mean, the last thing the owner thinks about is the fire alarm system. They're more concerned about the wallpaper and the paint and what it's going to look like. And then they find out they need a fire alarm system, and then we get a call.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because a fire alarm system. A lot of times people don't understand why and when the fire alarm system is required. And yeah, I've run into that situation as well where everybody's all concerned, and rightly so, concerned with the programming and the function of the space, and then the life safety code required life safety systems tend to be an afterthought of meeting the de minimis requirements of code. So yeah, I hear what you're saying. Some of that could come from ignorance about fire protection, or just getting busy and not remembering that you got to put some notification and initiation devices in there and meet code.
And sadly, a lot of times, the money is the deciding factor. Um, I went out uh, back when I was a technician to a facility. The insurance company was going to require the business to have a fire alarm system, or else they're going to raise their insurance premiums. And this was a woodworking place, and they had sawdust that was piled up on the corners. And of course, sawdust can be just as explosive as gas because the particles are so fine. Um, and the company quoted the system, and the owner decided to pay the insurance premium because it was cheaper than getting the fire alarm system installed. So um, I couldn't believe it, but they're the owner.
Man, that's a little disheartening. I would think, I get into situations a lot of times where even when it's not code required, it's fire alarm systems put in just because of that it's not an extravagant investment. I guess if you're a small business, it could be, but for any medium to large size company, uh, the fire alarm is a very small percentage of the overall budget of a building. So I see people adding them even when they are maybe on the threshold of being required. But Yeah, that's a little scary about the combustible dust hanging out in the shop just saying, "No, we'll just take the insurance premium bump." Seems like you would want to not only protect your building occupants, but ensure the longevity of your building um, with a minor investment in the grand scheme of things.
But yeah, if you consider the cost of replacing the building and all your assets versus the cost of the premium, of course, replacing the building and the assets, and God forbid someone dies, that's a lot more expensive than a fire alarm system.
Yeah, and I imagine there's a point at which that I imagine you could evaluate the break-even point in which the fire alarm system pays for itself and the insurance premium. So yeah, I don't know. That sounds a little bit short-minded, but yeah. Anyways, Paul, I wanted to speak with you a little bit more. I know that you are involved with a fire alarm systems training program at the Cape Fear Community College, and I wanted to hear more about that from you and about the program and about your work there.
Yes, the I am a instructor at Cape Community College, and the fire alarm system training program is designed to produce competent and qualified individuals. Is our belief that properly trained and knowledgeable fire alarm system designers and technicians will reduce the losses due to fire or false alarms and improve the quality of life in their community. And the course was actually an in-house training program that I provided for a company. I'm also a NICET ambassador, and at the time that I was completing the application for the ambassador program, one of the questions was, how are you going to promote NICET certification in your community? Um, which I had no idea how I was going to do that. And about the same time, the owner of our company wanted all the technicians to be at least NICET level 2 certified. And my journey to level 4, I had compiled lots of study materials and things of that nature. And I went to the owner and I offered to teach a little class in house to get those technicians ready for the NICET exam. Uh, and that was a little 1 hour class that we provided every few weeks for our people and whoever want to come. And the college ended up picking up that little training session, and it evolved into the classes that we have now. We offered two online classes. We have an Alarms 101 and Alarms 102, which is perfect for people that are working. The Alarms 101 is designed for those individuals who are new to the fire alarm industry and will focus on fundamentals, and that's geared to a NICET level 1 or 2. And we also have the Alarms 102, which is designed for individuals who are fire alarm technicians or have intermediate experience in the fire alarm industry, and we focus on application and design, and that is geared towards a NICET level 2 or level 3. So if you were a NICET level 2 wanting to get into level 3, which is the transition between a technician and a designer, it's going to be kind of hard for that technician out in the field to acquire that knowledge that they're going to need for that level 3 exam. Uh, and a great way to get that, of course, would be an online course.
Oh, that's great. I love hearing about different opportunities for people to learn about fire safety, and it sounds like you're providing a unique experience at the Cape Fear Community College for people to um, invest in their knowledge in life safety and fire safety and fire alarm systems. So I find that really fascinating. Yeah, I don't know if you would go over. I mean, it sounds like you cover the gamut of topics that you could learn because for these NICET certifications, you have to have a comprehensive knowledge. But yeah, I don't know if maybe you could speak on maybe some of the segments or some of the different topics that you cover. I'm sure it's comprehensive, and you by no means have to cover them all. But yeah, that might help paint a picture for the listeners.
Yeah, I guess a distinction that we like to make is this is a fire alarm course. This isn't a NICET prep course. You can find stuff online where they're going to teach you the exam and get you ready for that exam, but we develop fire alarm technicians. So we don't just talk about what's on the NICET exam. We go through physical science and the fundamentals and things that are going to help you understand how fire works and how fire is detected. And if you know those fundamentals and have that knowledge, then grasping the other concepts are much easier because you've got the fundamentals. A couple of advantages of the course is it's available online 24/7 at your availability. So if you work nights or days or weekends or whatever, the course is always there whenever you are available to take it. We also Our test questions are also on a computer online with a time limit. So you get a lot of practice when you go in to take that NICET exam. You're on a computer answering questions in a timed environment. And a lot of students will say that the NICET exam was easy after they took our course. And I believe that's because one, they're in that testing environment, and two, they know the code inside and out. Each course has about 1,000 test questions, and most of those questions come directly from the code book. If you know the code, then any exam is going to be easy, no matter who's giving you the exam. The only drawback that I can identify is the cost. Um, the course is only $185, and people don't feel that they're going to get anything for that low cost because other courses, they're five, six, $700, and only give you a sample of the material that we offer in our classes.
Wow, Paul, I didn't wasn't aware of that about the cost. That's an incredible offer for such a low price. These courses they can be just extreme prices. I was looking at prep courses just this week for another certification, and most of them just start at $1,000, and that's like if you're already subscribed to their, $300 membership. So, man, at $185, I'd definitely consider taking the course, even though I am by no means a beginner at fire alarm design. That sounds like something I would be definitely be interested in. So I'm so glad to hear about that.
Well, we got classes starting on the 31st in a few weeks, so we can definitely sign you up. When the college asks me what we can do to get more people, I tell them raise the price. It's just too cheap. And like you said, they can be upwards of $1,000. And a thing to look for is the CEUs that are offered. Those programs you're talking about, you may get point 0.1, point 0.2 CEUs for that training, and our course is going to give you 14.4 CEUs. So a lot of technicians will use our class to get points to get recertified. NICET requires that you get 90 points over a 3-year period, uh, but you can take our class, and when you pass it, you earn enough. Your CU credits will convert over to 45 NICET points. So right there, you get a 4-month class. You learn something, and you get 45 points for your NICET renewal, which is unheard of, all at a very low cost.
Yeah, that's incredible. And I think another excellent distinction is that for engineers need these CEUs as well. So I think that if you're an engineer looking for certification points for your professional engineering license, or I'm not aware if there are other certifications in which it might apply as well. I'm sure there are. Maybe like a CFPS or a CSP might have continuing education requirements. So sounds like it would be an excellent option for anyone who works in fire and life safety and wants to know more about these things. I think it's only responsible if you do work in these areas to have continuing education, even if it's not uh, your hand is not forced by some licensing agency. So yeah, I'm really really happy to hear about that. Paul seems like a good option, and I'm glad to be able to put a light on it. So, well, I wanted to talk about. I feel like I might be a little bit tone deaf in today's uh, COVID pandemic times if we didn't talk about how you are adapting the curricula at Cape Fear College, and it sounds like you already have addressed it in some ways with the online option. But yeah, I just wanted to ask if there are any ways that you see the way you teach fire alarms changing because of the pandemic.
Well, actually, I don't. For the classes I teach, there's no change. With the online nature of the course, it's already COVID friendly. Masks are optional. As far as the college goes, the college is working with local, county, health, and emergency management officials to actively monitor the novel coronavirus disease to protect the health and wellness of our campus. Uh, we have established safety protocols to include social distancing, face coverings, cleaning of classrooms throughout the day. Uh, the college also promotes personal hygiene, such as hand washing, uh, asks students to avoid physical contact, such as shaking hands and staying home when they're sick. Of course, the campus is open for advising, admissions, and financial aid, which, of course, that is also offered online virtually. As far as the fall, some of the traditionally in-person classes will be offered online or in a hybrid format with a combination of in-person and online instruction. Um, as part of the Federal Coronavirus Aid Relief and Economic Security or CARES Act, Cape Fear Community College received $2.3 million in federal funds, which will be provided as direct payments to students as an emergency financial aid grant for expenses incurred or related to the disruption of campus operations due to the virus. Uh, and we did have one student who had to withdraw for corona related issues they were having, and of course they were able to use those relief funds and were not required to pay for the class. In their case, we actually just rolled them into the next class. So just because we're virtually online, uh, I mean, you're not going to catch it by coming to class, but you may contract it other ways, and it may affect your ability to come to class. And of course, we're going to accommodate everyone.
Very nice, very nice. Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that because I know it's probably on everybody's mind. Maybe too much. Maybe this should just be about the fire safety and whatnot. But yeah, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit. Anyways, I know you spoke about your NICET ambassadorship earlier. I would love to hear more about that. And also, just in general, I think you've kind of illustrated it through this interview why NICET certifications are important just for your assuring your knowledge base. But yeah, I would like to hear you speak a little bit more about NICET certifications and the value of these.
Yes, I am a NICET ambassador, and the ambassador program was started to just get the word out to the community about what NICET certification is and to promote it as well. Um, I also serve on the NICET Board of Governors as the chair. The board meets twice a year to set strategic goals and establish operating policies for NICET. But certification in general, in any industry, it is important to the quality of life in communities to provide the public with bridges that won't fall down and buildings that are safe. It is important to make the distinction between certificate and certification. Anyone can take a class or seminar and receive a certificate, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're certified. NICET is a third-party organization that does not provide training. Some agencies that provide certifications will also provide training to get you certified, which is kind of a self-serving enterprise, whereas NICET is a third party. They don't provide training. Um, NICET certified individuals are experienced and competent. What makes them unique is that they require experience or time on the job, as well as knowledge in the form of an exam. For instance, you're going to take an exam for all four levels, but you're going to also need work experience for those levels. For level one, you need 3 months. For level two is 2 years. For level three is 5 years, and for level four is 10 years. So you may have the knowledge to pass that level four exam, but if you don't have 10 years of experience in the industry, then they're not going to certify you. And I think that's the biggest distinction between NICET and the rest is that there's two components for that certification, not just passing an exam.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's not just a something that you can sign up for and everybody passes, but it's a two-part process in which not only your knowledge is tested, but there's an experience requirement as well. So yeah, I'm glad you illustrated that fact. Yeah, that's interesting. I think it's important for people to get certified and not only be subject matter experts, but have third party verification of their knowledge. So I'm glad that you touched on that, Paul. But so I wanted to end with talking about a couple professional development topics. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Paul, do you see any? What do you see as trends in the industry right now in fire alarm and life safety?
I'm not sure I would call it a trend, but there are efforts to change legislation to eliminate licensure, which is, of course, PEs, and also certification requirements. The argument is that current requirements are a burden to the individual and they increase the cost to the owner. Um, as we talked about, businesses that don't want a fire alarm system, this is somewhat short sighted, and the cost saved initially would be eclipsed by the cost to repair or replace work that is performed incorrectly or by people who are not certified. And what's the cost on loss of life? I mean, it's hard to put a dollar amount on that. So a lawsuit from a bridge collapse or a fire alarm system that didn't work properly and result in death are much more costly than having someone that's competent to install a system. Most individuals will say, "Well, I know what I'm doing, so I don't need to be certified." Uh, but how does the owner and the public know that someone is competent without a certification to measure their performance? And that was really a big thing for me. I still remember the day that the fire marshal came to commission a fire alarm system, and the first thing he asked me was, "Where's your NICET certification?" And I'm like, "NICET?" I mean, I was competent, I knew what I was doing, but I didn't have a performance measure to indicate that I was. Uh, so when you do get that, one, you could demonstrate that you are competent and you are certified, and that'll sometimes get you a higher wage. So if you're certified, you'll get paid a little bit more, and your company can compete on projects that require certification. Companies tend not to want to get people certified because they're going to want more money, but yet the other side of the coin is that that company can it opens them up for more projects that are worth more money for them to do. So it's a win-win as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I hope that's not becoming a trend in the industry. Although I've heard of different states trying to lower that barrier to entry. But yeah, I'm thankful for organizations, certification organizations, and professional organizations out there like SFPE, and I'm sure NICET also, who are lobbying for these certifications and the qualifications of professional to be stress test. So
Yeah, the National Society of Professional Engineers, or NSPE, they're actively involved in as well. Um, so they're basically trying to eliminate the professional engineer, but if you eliminate the professional engineer, then you're not going to want someone, you're not going to require the certification as well. So it's kind of the first domino to fall would be that PE. So even NICET certified technicians still support NSPE because it's an engineering team. So certified technicians work closely with professional engineers to provide the same goal. So one is just as important as the other.
definitely, I agree. Yeah, it's as a fire protection engineers, I require on uh, essentially all my jobs unless it's requested otherwise by the owner or by the project stakeholders that designers be NICET certified and provide those qualifications as a component of the design. So yeah, I mean that's not going to be a requirement unless usually is not going to be a requirement unless engineers involved just say, hey, We really need qualified individuals performing this work and ensuring that it's, ensuring that they are certified. And so, yeah, I could see how those go hand in glove, the, those two certification aspects.
Yeah, it's really good to get that certification in the specification, but it's even better when that specification is enforced. A lot of times we read the specs where it calls for this and that, but they don't actually require it. Um, so good on the write up, but not so good on the follow through.
Yep, yep. Yeah, it's a struggle to enforce these things, and a lot of times it comes in the form of shop drawing review, in which we're, you know, asking where the NICET qualifications, add them to the draw, add your stamp to the drawing, or provide your NICET qualifications in another form. And, even though it's on the drawings and in the specifications, sometimes contractors who don't have NICET level 3 or 4 certified professionals, maybe they were the low bid, and they'll be like, well, we don't have NICET 3 qualified designers, and, so what do you want us to do? And so, yeah, so we get into those situations, and a lot of the times we'll, say, well, the requirement of the, contract documents or the requirement of the contract documents. So we do everything in our power to enforce those. Yeah, I know what you're saying. It can be a struggle to ensure that the letter of the contract documents is enforced.
And our company does get a few calls from a company that does get those projects, and then they find out they need an ISET certified designer for the shop drawings. So my advice would be read the contract first.
Definitely. So, Paul, I wanted to end with are there any resources that you would recommend to professionals who wanted to learn more about fire alarm systems?
Well, I hear there's a online class at Cape Fear Community College, uh, but really the NFPA, they provide free online access to all their codes and standards, and no one really has an excuse for not following their guidance because it's free. You can go on the internet, you can sign up, and you can read all the codes and standards. Of course, if you want to buy the book, you have to purchase it, but NFPA is not going to charge you to be knowledgeable of the codes and standards. All that's for free. Other than that, you got the internet, and the whole world is your oyster. So there's no excuse really not to know something. It's all there.
I appreciate that. Awesome. Well, Paul, I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast, and I'll be sure to put links to Cape Fear Community College and Drawfire LLC in the show notes if people want to find out more about you. And yeah, I just want to thank you so much, and I enjoyed our conversation.
Yes, sir, Gus. It was good to talk to you today.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Be sure to share the episode with a friend if you enjoyed it. Don't forget that fire protection and life safety is serious business. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are by no means a professional consultation or a codes and standards interpretation. Be sure to contact a licensed professional if you are getting involved with fire protection and or life safety. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.